Arrogant millionaire insults black woman. Then begs her to fly him to a multi-million-dollar deal. The winter air outside was sharp and cold, the kind that made your breath hang heavy like smoke. Inside the glass-walled lounge of the airport's private terminal, the atmosphere was even colder. Richard Montgomery, known across Wall Street as the Golden Wolf for his ruthless deals, leaned back in a leather chair, sipping a glass of aged scotch. He didn't notice the young black woman standing in front of him until she cleared her throat. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly, her voice steady but respectful. "Are you Mr. Montgomery? Your flight is scheduled." Richard glanced up, eyes narrowing, and gave a dismissive wave of his hand. Yes, I know who I am. But who are you?" The woman straightened her posture, her chin lifting slightly. "I'm Kelly. I'm here to—" "Save it," Richard cut her off, his tone dripping with disdain. He smirked and turned back to his drink. "Don't waste my time with introductions. You're clearly staff. Handle the luggage or fetch someone who can." Kelly froze for a moment, the words stinging, but she didn't respond. Instead, she held his stare for half a second, long enough for him to notice the flicker of fire in her eyes, then walked away silently. Richard chuckled under his breath. These airports will let anyone in these days. Hours later, as the snow outside thickened and holiday chaos filled every terminal across the country, Richard strutted toward his private jet. His assistant trailed behind him, juggling calls and folders, reminding him of the stakes. "Sir, if you don't make it to Zurich tonight, the deal won't close," the assistant said nervously. "We're talking hundreds of millions. Every major airline is sold out. This flight is the only way." Richard smirked, adjusting his cashmere scarf. "Relax. I own the plane, don't I?" The assistant nodded. "Yes, but the pilot situation is tricky. With the holiday rush, every available charter pilot is booked solid. We couldn't get a replacement." Richard frowned, finally paying attention. "What do you mean replacement? Where's my pilot?" Just then, the sound of firm footsteps echoed through the hangar. Richard turned, and froze. Kelly was walking toward the jet, dressed in a crisp pilot's uniform. The captain's wings glinted under the harsh white lights. She carried her flight bag with the calm confidence of someone who'd spent thousands of hours in the sky. Her voice was calm but layered with quiet strength. "Mr. Montgomery, your flight is ready for departure." Richard's jaw tightened. He blinked twice, unsure if this was some cruel joke. "You," he scoffed, his voice low with disbelief. "You're the pilot?" Kelly met his eyes without flinching. "Yes, sir. I'm Captain Kelly Harris. I'll be flying you to Zurich tonight." For the first time in years, Richard Montgomery had no words. Richard's face stiffened. For the first time in years, he felt an emotion he wasn't used to, loss of control. His chest tightened as he glanced at his assistant, who quickly looked away. This is absurd," Richard muttered, trying to laugh it off. "I won't be flown across the Atlantic by her." His voice cracked slightly at the end, betraying his nerves. Kelly adjusted her gloves slowly, her movements calm and deliberate. "Then, sir, I'm afraid you won't be flown at all. Every other pilot is booked. And every other commercial flight tonight is oversold." She let the words hang in the air, her tone polite but edged with quiet power. Richard's assistant leaned closer to him, whispering urgently, "Sir, we can't afford to cancel. If we miss the Zurich meeting, the deal collapses. Investors will walk. The board will never forgive." Richard shot him a glare, then turned back to Kelly. "Do you have any idea who I am? I close deals bigger than the salaries of 10 of you in a single afternoon. I don't have time for—" Kelly's eyes locked on his, calm yet cutting. "Yes, Mr. Montgomery. I know exactly who you are. That doesn't change the fact that I'm the only person who can get you to Zurich tonight. Whether you board this plane or not is entirely up to you." Her words struck harder than he expected. Richard swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. He could feel the weight of the holiday season pressing down, the snowstorm outside, the fully booked flights, the millions hanging by a thread. Inside, his thoughts tangled. How could this happen? A woman I dismissed like a nobody, standing here with my future in her hands. No, not just a woman, this woman. For the first time, he saw Kelly differently. Not as staff. Not as someone beneath him. But as the person holding all the power in the room. The assistant broke the silence, voice trembling. "Sir, it's your call. Do we fly? Or do we lose everything?" Kelly stood tall, her expression unreadable, waiting. Richard's hand tightened around his leather briefcase. The echo of his own cruel words from earlier burned in his ears. For once, Richard Montgomery, the man who never begged, had no choice but to decide whether his pride was worth more than his empire. The hangar was silent except for the low hum of the jet's engines warming up. The snow outside tapped faintly against the glass like a reminder of time slipping away. Richard adjusted his scarf, pretending to think, but inside, his pride was tearing at him like claws. How did it come to this? Me, Richard Montgomery, reduced to depending on the very woman I insulted. If word got out, I'd be a laughingstock. But then another thought struck him, colder than the winter air. If I don't get on that plane, I'll lose the Zurich deal. The headlines won't be about my pride, they'll be about my failure. Across from him, Kelly remained steady, her expression calm. But inside, her chest tightened. She remembered every second of his arrogance earlier, the scorn in his voice, the way he waved her away like she was less than human. For years she had faced men like Richard. Men who looked at her skin, her gender, and decided instantly what she could or couldn't do. But tonight was different. Tonight, he needed her. Her grip on her flight bag tightened. I've worked my whole life for this license. Every sleepless night, every exam, every hour logged in the sky, none of that can be taken away by his ignorance. He'll learn, one way or another, who I am. Richard finally spoke, his voice softer now, stripped of its earlier arrogance. Tell me something, Captain Harris. He hesitated on the title, as if it burned his tongue. You're certain you can handle this route? In this weather? Kelly's eyes flicked toward the snow-covered runway, then back to him. Her voice was steady, firm. I wouldn't be standing here if I couldn't. The assistant cleared his throat nervously. Sir, we're out of time. The Zurich board meets at dawn. If we don't leave now. Richard's heartbeat thudded in his ears. Pride on one side. Billions on the other. He could feel his empire balancing on the edge of Kelly's words. Kelly stepped closer, her presence strong but not hostile. Her voice dropped low, almost personal. Mr. Montgomery, you don't have to like me. But right now, I'm the only one who can get you where you need to be. The question is, are you willing to put your pride in the co-pilot seat? The words hit him like a blow. Richard opened his mouth, then closed it again. For a man who built his life on control, the silence was unbearable. And for the first time in a very long time, Richard Montgomery felt something he hadn't felt since his youth, small. The cabin of the private jet gleamed with polished wood panels and soft leather seats, every inch designed to scream wealth and power. But right now, the air inside was heavier than gold. Richard stood just inside the doorway, his briefcase still clutched tightly in one hand. His assistant slid past him nervously, taking a seat and pretending to busy himself with documents, though his eyes darted toward Richard and Kelly every few seconds. Kelly stepped into the cockpit, her movements precise, confident. She placed her flight bag down, flipped open her logbook, and began running through the pre-flight checklist. Her voice, calm and professional, carried back into the cabin. Fuel tanks topped. Weather route confirmed. Instruments, green. Richard hovered awkwardly near the entrance, torn between stepping further inside or storming back out into the snow. Mr. Montgomery, Kelly said without looking up, her tone clipped, please take your seat. We'll be departing shortly. The formality in her voice cut deeper than outright anger would have. It reminded him that to her, he was just another passenger. A name on the manifest. Nothing more. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. Do you always talk to your passengers like this? Kelly turned her head, just enough to let him see the steel in her eyes. I talk to my passengers with respect, Mr. Montgomery. Always. Whether they return it or not, that's on them. Richard felt his jaw tighten. For a man used to commanding every room, every board meeting, every dinner table, the feeling of being corrected, no, put in his place, was foreign. And yet, he couldn't deny the sting of truth in her words. He eased into one of the leather seats, setting his briefcase beside him. His voice softened, barely above a whisper. I may have spoken out of turn earlier. Kelly flicked a series of switches, the cockpit filling with a soft hum as the engines roared to life. She didn't look back. You didn't just speak out of turn, Mr. Montgomery. You humiliated someone you didn't even know. The words hung heavy in the cabin. For the first time, Richard had no defense. No witty retort. No way to spin the moment in his favor. He looked out the window instead, watching the snow swirl in the runway lights, and muttered quietly, almost to himself. I'm not used to being the one who needs someone else. Kelly heard him. A small, almost invisible smile tugged at the corner of her lips. But she didn't reply. Instead, she adjusted the throttle and announced firmly. Cabin secure. Prepare for takeoff. The engines roared louder, the plane trembling with restrained power. Richard gripped the armrests, his thoughts a storm of pride, fear, and something he hadn't felt in years, respect. And as the jet rolled toward the runway, he realized the holiday season had given him a gift he never wanted, a mirror. The runway stretched out like a glowing ribbon in the storm. Snowflakes streaked across the windshield, whipped by the engine's power. Inside the cabin, the lights dimmed, and Richard's heartbeat pounded louder than the turbines outside. Kelly's voice crackled over the intercom, calm and steady. "Tower, this is Falcon 7 requesting clearance for immediate departure." The reply came through static. "Falcon 7, you are cleared for takeoff. Runway 22 left. Safe travels, Captain Harris." Richard froze. Hearing her title over the radio, Captain Harris, was like a slap across the face. The world, it seemed, respected her authority, even if he hadn't. The engines roared. The jet surged forward, pressing Richard back into his seat. His knuckles whitened against the leather armrests. For the first time in years, he felt small, powerless, at the mercy of someone else. "Speed check. Engines green. Rotate," Kelly's voice called from the cockpit. The nose of the jet lifted, and the ground fell away. City lights blurred into a sea of gold beneath the wings. Snow swirled around them, the turbulence rattling the cabin. Richard's chest tightened. He hated flying even when he trusted the pilot, and right now, all he could think about was his pride hanging by a thread. Is it safe in this weather?" he called out, his voice louder than he intended. Kelly didn't hesitate. "Safe as long as you trust me." Her words sliced through him. He swallowed hard, gripping the seatbelt across his chest. For a man who trusted only contracts, lawyers, and numbers, the idea of trusting her felt like a mountain he didn't know how to climb. But as the jet climbed higher, breaking through layers of storm cloud, something shifted. The turbulence eased, and suddenly, they burst above the storm. The world outside transformed, an endless blanket of clouds beneath them, glowing silver in the moonlight. Above, the sky stretched black and infinite, stars scattered like diamonds. Richard leaned toward the window, his mouth parting slightly. For a moment, he forgot the deal, the millions, the power. All he saw was beauty, and the woman who had brought him here. From the cockpit, Kelly's voice came again, softer this time. "Welcome to cruising altitude, Mr. Montgomery. Estimated time to Zurich, 7 hours." Richard sat back slowly, still staring out at the stars. His pride was still there, wounded and heavy, but now, something else stirred beneath it. Respect. Curiosity. Even, gratitude. He whispered to himself, barely audible. "Maybe I've been flying blind all along." The jet settled into a smooth hum, gliding high above the clouds. The storm was far beneath them now, left behind like a shadow that couldn't follow. Richard sat back, loosening his tie, but he couldn't relax. His eyes kept drifting toward the cockpit, toward the steady silhouette of Captain Kelly Harris. He had built an empire out of commanding people, yet here, sealed inside a tube of steel thousands of feet in the air, he was the one being carried. After an hour, Kelly stepped into the cabin, leaving her co-pilot to monitor the controls. She removed her cap, setting it neatly on the armrest across from him, her natural curls spilling out, catching the soft overhead light. Richard cleared his throat, trying to mask his unease. Don't you need to be in there?" Kelly folded her arms lightly. "Autopilot has it for now. Besides, I thought you might want a chance to look your pilot in the eye. Without the headset." Her tone was calm, but there was something deliberate about it. A chance. A test. Richard shifted in his seat. The leather creaked under him as if it, too, was uncomfortable. He tried for charm, the same charm that had disarmed senators, bankers, and billionaires before. "You're not like most pilots I've met." Kelly raised an eyebrow. "Most pilots you've met were men, I assume." The words cut sharper than he expected. He smirked weakly. "Touché." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the soft vibration of the engines. Finally, Richard's voice dropped lower, stripped of bravado. "Back at the terminal? I was wrong." Kelly tilted her head, studying him. "Wrong about what?" Richard exhaled slowly, staring at the stars outside the window instead of her face. "About you. About what I thought I saw when you walked up to me." He paused, searching for words he wasn't used to saying. "I spoke without thinking. Or maybe I spoke with thinking, the kind of thinking I've carried too long." Kelly didn't reply right away. She let the silence sit, heavy and honest. Then she leaned forward slightly. "You're not the first man to underestimate me, Mr. Montgomery. And you won't be the last. But the difference is, most don't end up sitting in my cabin at 35,000 feet, realizing they've got nowhere else to go." Her words weren't cruel. They were simply true. And truth had a weight Richard wasn't used to carrying. For the first time in years, he felt his voice crack. You ever get tired of proving yourself? Tired of walking into rooms where they've decided who you are before you even speak?" Kelly's eyes softened, though her posture stayed strong. "Every single day. But then I remember, I don't fly for them. I fly for me." She sat back, her gaze steady. "The sky doesn't care about money, or race, or gender. Up there, the only thing that matters is whether you can keep the plane in the air. And I can." Richard swallowed hard. For once, he didn't have a comeback. He just sat there, staring at her, realizing that in a world where he thought money bought him everything, it couldn't buy him this, her respect. And for the first time in his adult life, Richard Montgomery wondered if humility might be worth more than pride. The cabin lights were dim, glowing a soft amber, the kind of light that made confessions feel heavier. Outside, the stars burned cold and eternal, but inside, the silence between them was warmer, charged with unspoken truths. Richard rubbed his temples, a gesture Kelly noticed but didn't comment on. He looked different now, not the sharp, untouchable tycoon she had seen in the lounge hours earlier, but a man cracking at the edges. Finally, his voice came, quieter than she'd ever imagined it could be. You know, I built everything I have by being the one in control. The one who never bends. The one who doesn't need anyone. But tonight, he paused, his hand tightening on the armrest. Tonight I realize I've been lying to myself. Kelly leaned back, her gaze steady, her arms folded loosely. Control is an illusion, Mr. Montgomery. Pilots know that better than anyone. The weather changes, engines fail, turbulence comes out of nowhere, and you learn real fast that you're not as powerful as you thought. Her words cut deeper than he expected. He let out a bitter chuckle. You're saying I've been living like a man in turbulence without even knowing it. Kelly's lips curved into the faintest smile. If the shoe fits. Richard looked down at his hands. For years, those hands signed billion-dollar contracts, sealed mergers, crushed competitors. Now, they trembled faintly in the quiet. He hated that Kelly could see it. I wasn't just disrespectful, he said suddenly, his voice breaking through the silence. I was cruel. You didn't deserve that. And the worst part? I didn't even think twice about it. It's second nature to me. Kelly tilted her head, her eyes softening. That's the problem with power. It tricks people into thinking they can define others. You looked at me and saw what you wanted to see, not who I am. Her words hit him harder than any boardroom ambush ever had. He forced himself to meet her eyes this time. And who are you, Captain Harris? She let the question hang in the air, then answered with quiet conviction. I'm the woman flying this plane while you sit back, hoping I don't fail. I'm the one who worked twice as hard to get half as far, but kept going anyway. I'm the pilot who doesn't care if the world doubts me, because I don't doubt myself. Her voice sharpened just slightly. And right now, I'm the difference between you making that deal in Zurich or losing everything. Richard's throat tightened. For once, he didn't hear arrogance in her words. He heard truth. Raw, unshakable truth. He exhaled slowly, leaning back, his pride slipping further away. Maybe you're the kind of person I should have been all along. Kelly didn't respond. She stood, placed her cap back on, and adjusted her uniform with quiet dignity. Then she turned toward the cockpit. Buckle up, Mr. Montgomery, she said firmly, her voice carrying that same calm authority. Night skies are clear now, but storms don't stay away forever. Richard sat there, staring after her, realizing she wasn't just talking about the weather. Hours passed, the steady hum of the engines lulling the cabin into uneasy quiet. Richard drifted in and out of thought, replaying Kelly's words, the sting of truth in every sentence. He was a man who conquered markets, crushed rivals, dictated futures, yet tonight, he sat powerless, humbled at 35,000 feet. Then it came. The storm. The jet jolted violently, rattling the glasses in their holders. Lightning cracked in the distance, illuminating the clouds in blinding flashes. The assistant gasped, gripping the seat beside him, his knuckles white. Captain Harris, Richard called out, his voice tight, is this? Her voice cut through, calm, steady, absolute. I have it under control. The turbulence worsened, the jet dipping and climbing, the engines howling against the wind. Richard's chest hammered with fear. For the first time in years, no amount of money, no contract, no power could save him. His fate rested entirely in the hands of the woman he had humiliated. And still, she held steady. Through the cockpit door, Richard could see Kelly's silhouette. Her hands moved with confidence across the controls, her voice calm as she coordinated with air traffic. There was no panic in her, no hesitation. Only precision. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the storm broke. The jet burst through the last wall of clouds, into open skies bathed in silver moonlight. The turbulence eased. The engines hummed smoothly again. Kelly's voice came over the intercom, composed, unwavering. Ladies and gentlemen, we've cleared the storm. Cruising altitude stable. Sit back and relax. Richard exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his pride finally stripped bare. His voice shook, but he didn't care anymore. When Kelly stepped into the cabin again, he looked up at her, eyes unguarded for the first time. Captain Harris? I owe you more than a thank you. Tonight, you didn't just save my deal. You saved me from myself. Kelly studied him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. You don't owe me anything, Mr. Montgomery. What you do with this lesson, that's on you. He swallowed, nodding slowly. Maybe I'll finally learn to fly the right way. Not with engines and wings, but with respect. For the first time in a long time, Richard Montgomery smiled, not the smug grin of a man who conquered, but the fragile smile of a man reborn. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, the sky wide and forgiving. And as the jet cut through the night toward Zurich, Richard realized the deal waiting for him was no longer the only one that mattered.